The snow was falling so softly that night, it felt like the world was holding its breath. I remember the quiet, the kind of silence that sinks into your bones, the kind you get when the wind stops and the trees don't even whisper. I was alone in the cabin, just me and my old dog, Tuck. I had only stepped out for a second, but when I came back inside, I heard it, a sound that wasn't right, a kind of whimpering, like a cry. I told myself it was just a deer or something, but it wasn't. I should have gone back to bed, just ignored it, but I didn't. I opened the door to the back shed, and that's when I saw it, small, wet, shivering. A Bigfoot baby, or at least what I thought was a Bigfoot. I didn't know then what it would mean, taking it in. I didn't know how much it would change me, but I can't turn back now. I still have a recording of its cries somewhere, but I'm not sharing it. Not yet. I shouldn't even be telling you this, but it's been years, and maybe it's time. Before we continue this shocking story, we encourage you to subscribe to the channel as we are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the new year. It was supposed to be just another night in the cabin, nothing out of the ordinary. I'd been living out here for a few months, working from home, cutting wood, just keeping to myself. The isolation suited me. It was January 2012, deep winter, and the cold was the kind that made your breath freeze before it even left your mouth. The cabin sat about 15 miles from the nearest town, tucked into a clearing with the tree line maybe 30 yards from my back door. I'd chosen it for the quiet, for the space to think. I'd been through a rough divorce and needed somewhere far from everything. That night, I was heading out to check the woodpile when I heard the sound, a quiet whimper. At first, I thought it was a wolf pup, but no, it wasn't. It was too high-pitched, too desperate. The sound came from the shed, the small structure I used for tools and firewood. My dog Tuck, who usually barked at everything, just stood there with his ears back, whining low in his throat. That should have been my first warning. I opened the shed door, and there it was. This creature, hunched and small, maybe 2 feet tall, covered in thick dark hair, crying, barely able to move. The thing was a baby, no doubt about it. The proportions were all wrong for any animal I knew. The face was too flat, the eyes too large and dark. It looked at me with something like recognition, like it understood I could help. I should have just called someone, anyone, but I couldn't. I didn't. I brought it inside, wrapped it in an old blanket, and set it by the wood stove. That was mistake number 1. It felt wrong. It felt like I was breaking every rule in the book. But when I looked at that baby creature, it was like seeing a child in pain. It didn't matter that it wasn't human. I knew I couldn't just leave it out there to die. The temperature that night dropped to 15 below. Nothing survives that kind of cold without shelter, especially not something so small. So I kept it hidden in the shed for the first few days, feeding it whatever I could find. It wouldn't touch meat at first, just like a newborn would refuse formula. I tried milk, then mashed vegetables. Finally, it ate some berries I had frozen from the summer before. It drank water from a bowl I set down, using its small hands to cup the liquid. Those hands looked almost human, just covered in fine, dark hair. I called it Teddy. Not the best name, but it seemed right. The creature was about the size of a large teddy bear, and there was something soft about it despite the wild appearance. I told myself I'd take it to the authorities, but I didn't. I couldn't. What would they do to it? What would they do to me? I kept thinking about those stories you hear, the ones where people find something unusual and it ends up in some government facility. I didn't want that for Teddy. My wife had left me 6 months earlier. She'd taken most of our things and moved back to Seattle. I was glad she wasn't there to see this. She would have called someone immediately, would have insisted on doing the right thing. But what was the right thing? I kept the shed locked and made sure to feed Teddy at night when no one could see. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles down the road, but I wasn't taking chances. After a week, Teddy started making different sounds. Not crying anymore, but soft cooing noises, almost like purring. It would reach for me when I came into the shed, and I found myself staying longer each visit, just watching it. The creature was learning fast, figuring out how to move better, how to communicate what it needed. I knew this couldn't last forever, but I wasn't ready to let go. It wasn't just the crying anymore. By March, Teddy was getting bigger, stronger. What had been a 2-foot-tall infant was now closer to 3 feet, with broader shoulders and longer limbs. And then there was the smell. I hadn't noticed at first, or maybe I'd gotten used to it gradually. But after a few weeks away from the shed, I came back and the odor hit me like a wall. It was musky, wild, like wet dog mixed with something earthier. The kind of scent you'd expect from something that had been living off the land for years, not just a few months. I'd get whiffs of it when I'd go into the shed to check on Teddy. It didn't smell like a bear, not like anything I'd ever smelled before. It reminded me of the time I'd found a deer carcass in the woods, but fresher, more alive. Not decay, but presence. The woods had started feeling off, like something was watching. I'd go outside at night to bring in more firewood, and I'd get this feeling on the back of my neck, that animal sense that tells you you're not alone. I'd hear knocks, 3 in a row, every few nights. Not normal knocks, slow, deliberate, spaced maybe 5 seconds apart. They'd echo through the trees, impossible to pinpoint the source. I'd heard people talk about Bigfoot knocks before. There were forums online, videos of people in the Pacific Northwest recording these sounds and claiming they were communication signals. I'd always thought it was nonsense, people hearing what they wanted to hear. But now, standing in my yard at 2 in the morning, hearing those 3 deliberate knocks coming from somewhere in the darkness beyond my property, I wasn't so sure. Tuck wouldn't go past the tree line anymore. My old dog, who used to chase rabbits deep into the forest, now stopped dead at the edge of the clearing and refused to move forward. He'd stand there, hackles raised, staring into the shadows. Sometimes he'd whine. Sometimes he'd just turn around and head back to the cabin, tail between his legs. Animals know things we don't. I should have paid more attention to what Tuck was trying to tell me. I noticed the goats were gone in early May. All 3 of them, just gone. I'd been keeping them in a small pen about 50 yards from the cabin, mostly for milk and company. That morning, I went out to feed them and found the gate open. Not broken, not torn apart, just open. The latch was undone, like someone had used their hands to lift it. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle, no tracks in the mud either, which was strange because it had rained the night before. The ground should have been perfect for prints, but there was nothing. I walked the perimeter of the pen twice, looking for any clue. I thought maybe coyotes had gotten them, or someone had stolen them. But it didn't feel right. Coyotes would have left something behind. A thief would have left footprints. I called the sheriff's office that afternoon. A deputy came out the next day, a young guy named Martinez who looked barely out of the academy. He walked around the pen, took some notes, and told me it was probably predators. Mountain lion, maybe, he said. They're smart. They can open simple latches sometimes. I didn't believe him, but I nodded anyway. What was I supposed to say? That I thought Bigfoot took them? The knocks started again that night. Closer this time. 3 slow knocks, but they weren't coming from deep in the forest anymore. They were coming from just beyond the tree line, maybe 40 yards from my back door. I stood on the porch with a flashlight, shining it into the darkness, but I couldn't see anything. Just trees and shadows and the faint reflection of eyes that could have been a deer. Could have been. I checked on Teddy after hearing the knocks. The creature was agitated, pacing in the small space I'd cleared in the shed. It made low grunting sounds and kept looking toward the back wall, toward the forest, like it could sense something out there, like it knew. I stayed with Teddy for an hour that night, sitting on an old crate, watching this strange creature I'd taken in. I was beginning to wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake. Not taking Teddy in, but keeping the secret. Maybe something was looking for what I'd found. Maybe something wanted it back. The first real sighting happened in August 2014, more than 2 years after I'd found Teddy. By then, The creature had grown too large to keep in the shed. I'd had to make a decision months earlier, and I'd done something I still can't fully justify. I'd released Teddy back into the forest. It had been a warm night in June when I'd opened the shed door and just stood back. Teddy, now nearly 5 feet tall and strong enough to probably hurt me if it wanted to, had looked at me for a long moment. Then it had walked out, moving on 2 legs like a person, and disappeared into the trees. I'd cried that night. I'd gotten attached to something I never should have kept in the first place. But that August evening changed everything. I was sitting outside on my porch, watching the sunset behind the trees. The forest was still, quiet. Too quiet, like that first night I'd heard Teddy crying. I had a beer in my hand and was thinking about selling the cabin, moving back to civilization. The isolation was starting to wear on me. Then I saw something. A figure standing in the shadows just beyond the tree line. It wasn't a bear. Bears don't stand that still, and they don't have that shape. It wasn't a man either. Too tall, maybe 7 feet, too broad across the shoulders, covered in thick, dark hair that caught the last rays of sunlight. Its eyes looked right at me. I froze. I didn't know what to do. My beer slipped from my hand and shattered on the porch boards, but I couldn't move to clean it up. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there watching me. I could see the rise and fall of its chest as it breathed. I could see the intelligence in those eyes, the awareness. This wasn't just an animal. There was something more there, something that understood what it was looking at. The word hit me then, clear as day. Bigfoot, the legend, the thing I'd always laughed at when I'd heard people talk about it in town, the creature that supposedly lived in these mountains, that left footprints and broke tree branches and knocked on wood. I don't know how long we stared at each other. Could have been 30 seconds, could have been 5 minutes. Time felt strange. Then, slowly, the creature stepped back into the shadows and was gone, just melted into the forest like it had never been there at all. I sat there for another hour, not moving, trying to process what I'd just seen, trying to understand if that had been Teddy, all grown up, or something else entirely. Something that had always been out there watching me since the day I'd found that baby in my shed. It came closer that night. I'd gone to bed around 10, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those eyes, about the way the creature had looked at me. Around midnight, I heard it. Footsteps, heavy footsteps on my porch. The old boards creaked under the weight, slow and deliberate. 3 steps, then silence. 3 more steps. Silence again. I got out of bed and grabbed the shotgun I kept in the closet. My hands were shaking as I loaded it, even though I wasn't sure I could actually fire it at whatever was out there. I crept to the front window and looked out through the curtain. There it was, standing on my porch. Bigger than what I'd seen at the tree line earlier. Maybe 8 feet tall. Dark hair covering its entire body. It was looking at the front door, and I realized with a strange certainty that it knew I was inside. Then it did something I'll never forget. It reached out its hand and placed something on the porch railing. A basket, hand-woven from grass and small branches, filled with berries. The same kind of berries I'd fed to Teddy years ago. The creature stepped back, looked at the door one more time, and then turned and walked off the porch. It didn't run. It just walked, slowly, back toward the forest. I waited until I was sure it was gone before I opened the door. The basket was real. The berries were fresh. I picked it up and brought it inside, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. This was Teddy. It had to be. This was the creature I'd saved, all grown up, returning the favor, bringing me food like I'd brought food to it. The intelligence required for that kind of behavior, that kind of memory and reciprocity, it meant everything. This wasn't just some animal. This was Bigfoot, and it was capable of gratitude. I kept the basket. I still have it, hidden in my closet. I ate some of the berries, and they were fine, sweet and ripe. Every few nights after that, I'd find something on my porch. More berries, mushrooms. Once, a fish that was still fresh. Each time I'd hear those footsteps late at night. Each time I'd look out the window and see that massive figure moving in the darkness. We had an understanding, Teddy and me. I'd helped it when it was helpless. Now it was helping me in its own way, bringing me gifts, watching over me. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was grateful and amazed that this was happening, that Bigfoot was real and that I had proof. Private proof that I'd never share with anyone who wouldn't understand. 2 more years passed. I thought I was safe, thought the secret was mine to keep. Teddy would visit every few weeks, always at night, always bringing something. We never spoke. I never tried to touch it. We just existed in this strange arrangement, this peaceful coexistence. I'd wave from the window sometimes, and I swear Teddy would nod back, like we understood each other across the gulf of species and language. But then the hunters came in October 2016. 3 men from somewhere downstate come up to the Cascades for elk season. They'd set up camp about a mile from my cabin, and apparently they'd seen things, heard things, knocks in the night, heavy footsteps. They'd found the prints, too. Massive prints in the soft earth near the creek, each one nearly 18 inches long. They were excited. They thought they were going to be famous. They came to my door on a Saturday morning. I was drinking coffee on the porch when they walked up, carrying cameras and recording equipment. The lead hunter, a guy named Jim with a thick beard and a camouflage hat, asked me if I'd experienced anything unusual in the area. I lied, told them no, told them it was probably just bears. But they didn't believe me. "We've been tracking it for 3 days," Jim said. "Signs lead right to your property line. We know something's here, something big." He looked at my shed, then back at me. "Mind if we take a look around?" I did mind. I minded a lot. But I couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. So I let them walk my property, let them poke around the tree line. They found more prints. They found broken branches. They found evidence of something large moving through the area regularly. They knew. Not what it was exactly, but they knew something was here. That night, Teddy came to my porch as usual, but the hunters were still out there somewhere watching. I heard the footsteps and rushed to the door, opened it, and stepped outside. Teddy was there, holding another basket, but this time I shook my head. I pointed to the forest and made a shooing motion. Teddy understood. The creature looked at me for a long moment, those dark eyes reflecting the porch light. Then it set the basket down gently, turned, and disappeared into the trees. It moved quietly for something so large, barely making a sound. I watched it go, knowing that the hunters might have seen it, knowing that everything was about to change. They did see it. The next morning, Jim and his friends were back at my door talking fast and excited. They'd seen Bigfoot. They'd seen the creature people had been talking about for decades. They wanted answers. They wanted to know what I knew. I never told them the truth. What was I supposed to say? That I'd raised a Bigfoot infant in my shed? That the creature had been visiting me for years, bringing me gifts? They'd think I was insane. Or worse, they'd believe me and try to exploit it. Turn Teddy into some kind of specimen, some proof for the world. I couldn't let that happen. So I told them what I thought they'd accept. That yes, I'd seen something occasionally. Something large moving through the trees. But I'd always assumed it was a bear. I lived alone out here, I told them. My imagination probably filled in details that weren't there. In the darkness, a bear standing on its hind legs could look like anything. They weren't satisfied with that answer, but what could they do? Jim came back twice more over the next week, asking questions. He wanted to set up cameras on my property. He wanted to stake out the area at night. I refused. Told him I valued my privacy, that I'd chosen this place specifically to be left alone. Finally, he gave up. The hunters broke camp and left, but I knew they'd be back, or others like them would come. The secret was unraveling. That November, I made a decision. I had to protect Teddy. The creature that had been a part of my life for nearly 5 years now was in danger because of those hunters and their cameras. So I packed up some essentials, grabbed my old video camera, and headed into the forest. I needed to find where Teddy lived. I needed to warn it somehow. I followed the game trails deeper into the woods than I'd ever gone before. After about 3 miles, I found it. A cave entrance, partially hidden by fallen logs and brush. Fresh prints led inside. I didn't go in far, just stood at the entrance and called out, "Teddy?" Just that name, spoken into the darkness. I felt ridiculous, calling a Bigfoot by a nickname like it was a pet. But what else could I do? Teddy emerged from the shadows. In the dim light filtering into the cave, I could see how truly massive the creature had become. At least 8 feet tall, maybe closer to 9, covered in thick, dark hair. But the eyes were the same. Recognition flickered there. Memory. I held up my hands, showing I meant no harm. Then I spoke, slowly, hoping somehow it would understand. "People are coming. Dangerous people. You need to be careful." I don't know if Teddy understood my words, but it seemed to understand my tone. The creature moved closer, and for the first time in 5 years, we were face to face. Close enough to touch. I reached out my hand, and Teddy reached back. Our hands touched for just a moment. Teddy's hand was massive, easily twice the size of mine. The palm was rough, calloused, but warm. Human-like, but not human. I felt the strength in that hand, the power that could easily break bones if the creature wanted. But Teddy was gentle. It held my hand carefully, almost tenderly. Then it released me and stepped back. I pulled out my video camera. I'd been carrying it for weeks, hoping for a chance like this. I needed proof, not for the world, but for myself. Something to look at years from now when I questioned whether any of this had really happened. I raised the camera, and Teddy didn't move away. The creature stood there, letting me film. 30 seconds of clear footage. Bigfoot, in full daylight, staring directly at the camera. The most definitive proof anyone could ask for. Then Teddy made a sound, a low, whooping call that echoed through the forest. It was a goodbye. I knew it somehow, the way you know things without being told. This was the end of our arrangement. The hunters had ruined it. The world was pressing in, and Teddy needed to go deeper into the wilderness, farther from people, farther from me. The creature turned and walked back into the cave, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there for a long time, camera in hand, feeling a loss I couldn't quite name. I'd saved Teddy's life 5 years ago, but Teddy had saved mine too. Given me purpose when I had none, given me wonder when I'd forgotten what that felt like. Now it was over. I walked back to my cabin, the video camera heavy in my pocket. The footage was there. The proof was there. But I knew I'd never show it to anyone. Some things are too precious to share with a world that wouldn't understand. That winter, I heard the knocks 3 more times. 3 slow knocks, far in the distance. I'd stand on my porch and knock back. 3 times. It became our final ritual. A way of saying we were still here, still thinking of each other. Then, by February, the knocks stopped. I don't know if Teddy moved on to a different range, or if something else happened. I never saw the creature again. But I kept the video, hidden in a drawer along with that first basket of berries. Physical proof that Bigfoot exists, that I'd known a Bigfoot, had a relationship with one. The hunters never found what they were looking for. They gave up after a few months. But I knew. I'd always know. I didn't tell anyone for a long time. Not my ex-wife when she called asking how I was doing. Not the ranger who came by to check on me after a bad storm. Not the bartender in town who made jokes about Bigfoot sightings every time someone from out of town came looking. I kept the secret locked away, just like the video camera in my drawer. It felt safer that way. Safer for me, safer for Teddy, safer for whatever other creatures might be out there in those mountains. But secrets have weight. They sit on your chest at night, make it hard to breathe. I'd lie in bed, thinking about what I knew, what I'd experienced, thinking about how the world would react if they knew. Some people would be amazed, Others would be skeptical. Many would want to hunt, to capture, to prove. And that's what scared me most. Bigfoot wasn't just a legend or a story. Bigfoot was real, and Bigfoot deserved to live in peace. I started having dreams. In them, Teddy would be back on my porch, small again like that first night, crying in the snow. I'd open the door to help, but then the hunters would appear. Jim and his friends, with their cameras and their guns. They'd push past me, grab Teddy, take it away. I'd wake up sweating, heart pounding. The guilt of keeping the video, of having that evidence, would wash over me. What if someone found it? What if the camera was discovered after I died? One morning in late winter, I made a decision. I took the camera out to the fire pit behind the cabin. I'd delete the footage, destroy the evidence. It was the only way to keep Teddy safe. But when I turned on the camera and watched those 30 seconds again, I couldn't do it. The video showed something impossible. It showed Bigfoot, clear as day, looking at the camera with intelligence and awareness. It showed a creature that shouldn't exist according to science, but did. I couldn't destroy that. It felt wrong. Instead, I compromised. I made a copy. Just one copy. On an old hard drive that I buried in a waterproof container in the forest. Then I hid the original camera in a new spot, somewhere even I would have trouble finding if I wasn't specifically looking for it. 2 copies of the truth, separated and hidden. If something happened to me, if someone needed proof someday, it would be there. But it wouldn't be easy to find. The creatures would have time to move deeper into the wilderness, time to adapt to a world that was always pressing closer to their home. The knocks never started again. The gifts stopped coming. My porch stayed empty except for the leaves that fell every autumn. Life went back to normal, or as normal as it could be after what I'd experienced. But I never forgot. How could I? Every time I looked at the tree line, I remembered. Every time I heard a strange sound at night, I wondered. Bigfoot was out there somewhere, and I was one of the few people who knew for certain. By the time 2017 rolled around, I'd made my decision to leave. The cabin that had been my refuge for 5 years had become something else. A reminder. Every room held memories of Teddy. The shed where I'd first kept the creature warm. The porch where gifts had appeared. The tree line where we'd exchanged our silent understanding. It was too much. I needed distance, needed perspective, needed to figure out how to live with what I knew. I put the cabin up for sale in March. A young couple from Seattle bought it by May, eager for their own piece of the wilderness. I didn't tell them anything. What would I say? Watch out for Bigfoot? They'd think I was crazy. Instead, I wished them well, packed up my belongings, and moved to a small apartment in Olympia. Back to civilization. Back to noise and people and the daily distractions that keep you from thinking too deeply about impossible things. But leaving didn't help the way I thought it would. In the city, surrounded by concrete and car horns and the constant hum of humanity, I felt more isolated than I ever had in the cabin. At least there, the isolation had been my choice. At least there, I'd had Teddy. Now I had nothing but memories and a hidden video that I couldn't share with anyone. I'd go to work, come home, eat dinner alone. Normal life, boring life, safe life. But I'd lie in bed at night and remember those eyes looking at me, that massive hand touching mine, the gentle intelligence of a creature that shouldn't exist. I started researching online, carefully, looking at forums where people discussed Bigfoot sightings, reading reports from areas similar to where I'd lived. There were patterns. Other people had experiences like mine. Gifts left on porches, gentle interactions, protective behaviors. But mixed in with those accounts were the hunters and the skeptics, the people who wanted proof at any cost, the people who would exploit rather than protect. I never posted anything. I just read, and I understood why the silence was necessary. Sometimes I'd drive back toward the Cascades. Not to the cabin, but close enough to see the mountains in the distance. I'd pull over at a rest stop and just look at that tree line, remembering. I'd think about Teddy out there, living a life I could barely imagine. Did the creature remember me? Did it ever come back to the cabin, looking for the human who'd helped it survive? I hoped not. I hoped Teddy had moved on, found others of its kind, lived far from the reach of civilization. The truth is, I protected Bigfoot by keeping quiet. Every day I didn't share that video, every conversation where I didn't mention what I'd experienced, I was keeping the creatures safe. It was the least I could do. Teddy had trusted me enough to let me film it, to reach out and touch my hand. I owed it discretion. I owed it silence. And that's what I gave. Years have passed now. The cabin's been sold twice since I left. The current owners are a retired couple who spend their summers there. I've driven by once, just to see. The shed's been torn down and replaced with a garden. The tree line's been pushed back a bit. Progress, they call it. Development. The wilderness shrinking year by year. I still have the video. It's hidden in 3 places now. The original camera in a storage unit, the hard drive still buried in the forest where I left it, and a 3rd copy on an encrypted drive I keep locked away. Call it paranoia, call it protection. I call it responsibility, because someday someone might need to know. Someone might need proof that Bigfoot exists, that it's real, that we need to protect these creatures and their habitat. But that day hasn't come yet, and maybe it never will. Maybe the best thing I can do is take this secret to my grave, let the creatures live in peace, without the weight of human knowledge pressing down on them. They've survived this long by staying hidden. Who am I to expose them? I'm older now, 54 years old, living alone in a city apartment, working a job I don't care about. Sometimes I wonder if any of it really happened. The mind plays tricks, after all. Isolation can cause hallucinations. Stress can create false memories. But then I remember specific details. The texture of Teddy's hand, the weight of that basket, the smell, God, that smell that was unlike anything else. Those things were real. I know they were real. Late at night, maybe around 3 in the morning when I can't sleep, I still hear it sometimes. 3 soft knocks. Distant. Impossible because I'm on the 4th floor of an apartment building in the middle of the city. But I hear them anyway. Memory or reality, I don't know anymore. I'll get up and go to the window, looking out at the streetlights and the empty sidewalks. No forest, no tree line, no Bigfoot. Just the city, sleeping. I've thought about going back, hiking into those mountains, finding that cave again, calling out for Teddy one more time. But I'm scared. Scared that I won't find anything. Scared that I will. Scared that too much time has passed and the connection we had is gone forever. So I stay here, in my safe little apartment, with my secret and my memories and my hidden video. This is my confession. This is the truth. I found a Bigfoot infant in 2012. I raised it for months. I released it and watched it grow. I formed a bond with a creature that science says doesn't exist. I filmed it, touched it, understood it, and then I let it go, back into the wilderness where it belonged. I protected it by keeping quiet. I protected it by not seeking fame or recognition. I protected it by staying silent, and I'd do it again, every single time. Because some things are more important than proof. Some things are more important than being believed. If you ever find yourself in the Cascades, late at night, and you hear 3 slow knocks echoing through the trees, remember this story. Remember that Bigfoot is real. Remember that it's not a monster or a myth, but a living creature deserving of respect and space. Don't hunt it. Don't try to prove it. Just acknowledge it, maybe knock back 3 times, and then let it be. That's what I do now, in my own way. 3 soft knocks on the window frame at 3 in the morning, a little ritual to remember what I had and what I gave up. The knocks echo in the empty apartment, unanswered. But somewhere, in those deep mountain forests, maybe Teddy hears them. Maybe Teddy remembers. And that's enough.